Hi, I'm Sandy with Alpha Building Consultants, and I want to talk to you a little bit today about the idea of a reinspection on a property. So in this video, I'm going to explain how a reinspection can save you time, money, and aggravation. First off, just to be sure we're on the same page, I'm going to define the term. You may have already heard it, but in case you haven't, let me just tell you what we at Alpha believe is a reinspection. This is a shorter inspection that is done after an initial inspection, but before closing, then covers only the items that had been put into the contract that the seller is going to repair before closing. Some people have the idea that the inspector is going to go back out and inspect everything on the property again and make sure nothing's changed. That would just be an inspection. We could do that, but it's not really necessary or very common. In our definition, we go back out, we get a list sent to us of the things that have been put in the contract that the seller has already repaired and they're done. So let me tell you a little story that'll kind of explain it, I think, pretty well. We were having lunch with a real estate agent, and he had recently been the buyer's agent for a house that sold. And after the inspection and all the contract, everything was done, he had asked his client if they wanted a reinspection, if they wanted us to come back out. We had done the initial inspection. And the buyer said, no, I don't really think that's going to be necessary. I don't want that added expense. And so that's the way it went. Well, on the day before closing, they had a final walkthrough, which is the common practice here in town. And during the walkthrough, they had a list of receipts that the seller had given them concerning the repairs. And as they were walking through, the client asked the broker, he said, aren't you going to look and make sure these things are done correctly? And the broker said, no, I'm not. He said, what do you mean you're not going to make sure they're done correctly? Well, that's not what I do. That's not my area of expertise. I can't do that. That's why we wanted to have a reinspection done. All we can do now is rely on these receipts and trust that things were done correctly. So as they're walking through the house, they came across something, and to be honest, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was obvious. It was an obvious repair that they had asked to be done, but it wasn't done, and it was on the receipts as if it had been done, but it wasn't completed. So now the client's getting a little agitated, a little worried about what else might not have been done. And some of the items were up in the attic, and they said, well, aren't you going to go up in the attic and make sure that things are done correctly? And again, the agent said, no, I'm not. That's not what I'm able to do, not what falls under my jurisdiction. And what the truth was, and he didn't really want to necessarily say all this to the client, but that opens them up to, an agent up to liability that they don't need to be opened up to. They're not a contractor. That's not what their job is. And then if they go and say it's done correctly, they have now accepted the liability for that item. And so the client wanted to go up in the attic. He said, well, let me go up in the attic and look. He said, well, that's really not possible at this time either because the house is still in the other people's name. Attics are places that people regularly have issues and have things happen. We can't do it. So they finish the walkthrough and they go to closing. And now this client is uncomfortable. He's unsure. And to be honest, we were called back out later because some of the things weren't fixed and they wanted somebody to show that and then find some people to fix it. So when something like this happens, what would be the next step? Either the client doesn't go to closing, which is never a pleasant thing for anybody, or they go to closing and they fight it out there. They ask the agent to do a lot of last-minute legwork trying to get with the listing agent and get it all fixed. Whatever it is, it's not a pleasant experience because it's last minute and a lot of stuff happening. Instead, we say, have Alpha Building Consultants, have us come back out. Let us look at it ahead of time. Let us see what's going on, if everything was fixed. Do you think the sellers were lying? Probably not. We have found many times that there have been things that were said to have been fixed. The seller paid for them to be fixed, and they weren't fixed. The contractor, for whatever reason, didn't do their job. And I have some other stories on that if you ever want to hear them that even involve our own family. So what am I suggesting here? I'm suggesting that you let us come back out. You let us look through everything. Give that peace of mind that what's in that contract is really what's going to happen. Otherwise, you're going to get into the home later, and then you're going to be looking at things, and you're either going to be trying to go back to a seller who's now moved on, to agents who are now working with other people who are going to try to help, but it's just a lot of mess. or you're going to be paying to get it fixed yourself, even though that was part of the contract. So a reinspection can save you time, it can save you money, and it can definitely save you aggravation. So if you want to know more about how we can help with reinspections, give us a call, 601-992-4142, and we'd be happy to help you. Again, that's 992-4142. Thank you. I'm Sandy with Alpha Building Consultants.